So we are ready to roll.
Okay, right. So good afternoon, everyone. And the panel today here debates the tourism opportunities in Tamil Nadu, as we say, post-COVID, which effectively is really how we revive and thrive in the short, medium, and long term as far as tourism potential of Tamil Nadu is concerned. So I do have a very distinguished panel who, of course, I will introduce as we go along. Where each one would have about 7 or 8 minutes to speak their mind in terms of what needs to be done, how they see the current perspective, how do they see the future perspective, and what is it that we need to pay attention to when we are developing tourism opportunities. And when we talk about tourism opportunities, we must bear in mind that Tamil Nadu itself is both a source market as well as a recipient market. So therefore, a recipient in terms of international overseas markets for incoming, recipient in terms of interstate, within state, and of course, a source in terms of being able to travel within one city to other. It is indeed a large state, and from various segmentation of tourism perspective, I have always believed it's like a country state. It does offer everything, which today in the travel and tourism perspective, we all know how important segmentations are. So therefore, it does offer a very segmented kind of approach, which we could, be it in the heritage structure, be it in the waterways, be it even in the global cruise line ports calling into Chennai, be it in the religious tourism, with being very heavily fragmented into the religious space. So there is, to put it this way, something for everyone. There is something in terms of even today, what we talk about short holidays, driving holidays, and there's no better place than Tamil Nadu to be able to do that. But I won't take too much time as to what it offers. We all know what it offers. So I think let's just begin off. I have with me a quick review of the panelists, and then we'll go. And may I also request the panelists to give a line or two of introduction to each other. So we have Sanjoy Roy, who's the co-chairman FICCI Cultural Committee, and he's the director of a company known as Teamwork Arts and very heavily into culture, having organized the Jaipur, literally, festival for one. We have Naveen Kundu. Naveen is the managing director of Mercury Travel and Tours, and also co-chair of FICCI Domestic Tourism Committee. Then Shobha Mohan, who's a founder of Rare Group of Hotels, which are again very rare and niche properties spread across the country. He's always been very impressed about the properties they offer. Sundar Singha is a well-known South India, Chennai-based DMC's perspective, handling tourists incoming into the country in his own way from various international markets and others. And he's also, of course, the co-founder of South India Hotel, director operations for South India Hotels and Restaurants. So he'll have a perspective himself. Lakshmi Sharnath is a travel blogger. That's an interesting space to be in, to be able to write the stories. And travel is all about stories. Holidays is all about stories. Holiday is all about experience. So we trust Lakshmi would be able to weave and build that around as she speaks. Vipul Jain comes from a company known as Gabbett System, which he founded, which is very heavy technology, digital driven in the holiday space, and having perfected almost the art of marketing circuits, and Char Dham Yatra for one, he's done it pretty extensively in terms of geo-tagging and how do you tag each and every tourist which is able to take those circuits. And I thought in many ways the same would be applicable to Tamil Nadu, which today offers tremendous circuits to be able to travel across, right? So that's Vipul. We are expecting Chef Ranveer Brar to probably join us a bit later. He will join in later. I'll introduce once he does. He's a celebrity chef, and I'm sure he would straight away come in and make us all interested in what he's to say. So if I may request Sanjoy Roy, co-chairman of FICCI Cultural Committee and managing director of Teamwork Arts, to come in first. So over to you, Sanjay. And not to forget, we've got this panel for about an hour, and then we've got 10 minutes of audience questions. Then audience is free to route their questions through the FICCI team, which will be directed to each of the panelists by name or generally any of the panelists would be picking it up. So over to you, Sanjoy.
Thanks so much, Ashish. I was actually very excited when I received the invitation saying that we're talking about Tamil Nadu, because this is one state that I feel has so much potential that needs to be unlocked. And I'm going to start with just one example. I mean, in pre-COVID, and of course, now everything we have to qualify as the pre-COVID era and the post-COVID era. Post-COVID era hasn't quite, I mean, it's in, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it hasn't quite started. But certainly in the pre-COVID era, if you looked at a city like Edinburgh, which is built heritage, has the largest arts festival in the world, and had an additional contribution to its economy in 2019 of 375 million pounds of additional spend into the economy over a 5-week period, with 1.2 million people coming through its doors for the annual Edinburgh festivals. The Edinburgh festivals itself, it's an anomaly. It's actually made up of 7 different festivals, everything from the Edinburgh Tattoo, which runs twice a day, every day of the month, and has a capacity of 8,000 people, to the Festival Fringe, which is the largest festival. It's the largest festival which is democratically, anybody can book, you can create your own show, you can rent a space, etc. And of course, there's the International Festival, the Science Festival, etc. And that bears corollary to Tamil Nadu and Chennai's season. Now, Chennai's season, as many of you know, is amongst the biggest getting together of culture in the country, and certainly in Southeast Asia. And yet, it's not leveraged in the way, say, that Edinburgh has been able to leverage it. Today, Edinburgh comes under 2 or 3 different sort of heads, but they all have a coordination group, which then is able to, which is the Festivals Edinburgh, which is then able to unlock and leverage the potential of the city. Unfortunately, in Tamil Nadu, the sabhas, which are the primal seats of culture, to date, I think, refuse to talk to each other and are not able to collectively market this incredible phenomena where you have over 3,000 performances in this period of time. I think the other thing, as Ashish said, it's both about going out and coming in. Now, if you look at the NRI population of Tamil Nadu, or the Tamils across the world, from the Bay Area and the IITs to the universities to NASA to every possible space in the world, you will see these to be some of the most important communities. And why is that important? Because they take with them their culture. So Bharatnatyam, for example, is a great export that India has. And whether it's in Washington or Chicago or Florida or Singapore or Indonesia or Australia, every city in this globe will have some kind of resonance of a Bharatnatyam teacher conducting Bharatnatyam classes, be it because they're from Chennai or not. It's irrelevant. Again, there's a great potential there, because what happens? Every one of the students or people, who have learned Bharatnatyam want to ensure that India or the Kalakshetras of the world recognize their talent. So they're happy to come and perform and do their first performance in somewhere in India, paying top dollar. Again, something that can be leveraged. Again, as Ashish said, what else is special about Tamil Nadu? The incredible religious temples, historical sites. The Chola bronzes, for example, sit in the Chennai Museum. The last time when I went, of course, it's changed a little bit right now. The last time I went to the museum in Chennai to see the Chola bronzes, I had to rattle the gate, go back to the main museum, say, I want to see the bronzes. Somebody rode out on a cycle, opened the locks. It was dusty as hell. And it's the same bronzes, 26 of them, were loaned to the Royal Academy of the Arts in London some years ago. And for 6 months, the lines to watch at, I think, about £35 a ticket to watch or to view the 26 Chola bronzes went around the block. Similarly, the people coming to the Chidambaram temple, which is seen to be the very basis of the Bharatnatyam tradition from the temple friezes, etc., is in an unholy mess in many ways. Friezes falling off, lots of restoration, no toilets to go to, no museum shop, no visitors center. Now, if we were able to unlock all of this in the same way now that you're seeing between the Chennai and the Mahabalipuram belt, where you've created good policy to be able to allow resorts to open out, etc., and you've been able to input into the local economy and changed in many ways the humble Tamil Nadu equivalent of a dhaba selling soft crab shells and prawns into something more fancy. Look at the kind of development that's possible. So, in order to do all of this, one is, of course, tourism and culture has to go hand in hand. And I keep talking about, as I've said this before on forums in FICCI, I keep talking about creative economy. The creative economy needs to be looked at. And unfortunately, today in India and in government and at the state level, the creative economy comes under 8 different ministries. Everything from HRD to tourism to women and child to MEA, etc. There's no one coordinating body. None of us collectively are able to go with one plan, one program, one policy need. And this is the problem, that until unless they start looking at us as a creative economy, not just a sector, but at an economy where it has been said that of every $1 million investment, you're creating 99 jobs in the creative economy. This was a research done by Monash some years ago and published, but we still don't get it. Yes, we're still sort of focusing on infrastructure, on manufacturing, etc. Infrastructure is a mess, is a must. But can we include the creative economy? Can we understand what that includes? And it's not just about artists and artisans, built heritage, etc. It's the entire system of tent houses, of lighting people, of marriages, of flower, of decorations, of caterers, and the entire ecosystem that in some estimations is seen to be providing 150 million to 250 million people a primary or secondary income. Now, if we look at some of this seriously and work collectively, even in FICCI, I know we have the tourism silo, we have a culture silo, we have a publishing silo. Even here, we don't tend to pull it together. And until unless we do that and really connect the dots, work with aviation, work with infrastructure, work with Ministry of Tourism, Culture, fishing, industries, forest, environment, we won't be able to crack this. Today, environment has to be the most important aspect in every policy decision that we look at, but it's not. It's, oh, by the way, because we have to get permission. It has to be built in. It has to come first, and all our policies have to follow from there. Otherwise, you're not going to have the temples, the seashore temples of Mahabalipuram. So again, my plea is that this is one state which has a degree of literacy. It has its sense of history and tradition and culture in place. Some of the greatest traditions have emanated out of it, whether it's the South Indian Tamil literature, whether it's Bharatnatyam, including the Carnatic music styles, etc., and all of the great music instrument makers, etc., this thing from there. But can we work collectively with infrastructure, with tourism, with hotels, with environment, with forests, with industry, to be able to create something that's homogeneous, which works together and collectively propels the state? Because we have to understand that the sunshine industry of the future is the creative economy. Until we get that, we're never going to be able to crack this problem of jobs and GDP increase. Most importantly, the happiness quotient in GDP increase. Ashish, back to you.
Thank you, Sanjay. And just to supplement what you're saying, that the soft power of a nation is probably not so acutely displayed as it is in Tamil Nadu, both in your culture, linguistic, architecture, and of course, dynastic culture coming in. And today, the good part is, Sanjay, to add to what you said, is that in the days of internet and the days of digitalization, the entire information, be it on the video form, be it on drones, be it in whatever form, can be available in one single operating platform, where a consumer is able to see through all the soft power and the infrastructure power to be able to decide whether it's the right destination. We all know what Spain has done as far as softness is concerned. We know the Latin American country. You, of course, mentioned the Edinburgh Festival. So therefore, I guess we have to realize that we really have no choice but to put everything under one canvas. And I'm sure later on, Lakshmi will mention more about that situation. Thank you so much. And may I now move on to Naveen Kundu, who's the Managing Director of Ebix Cash Travel and Holidays, and of course, the co-chair for FICCI Domestic Tourism. I'm sure Naveen will bring an operating perspective to what you've said and translate it together. Over to you, Naveen. You're on mute, I think, Naveen. Naveen?
Thank you, Ashish.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thanks very much. Such a distinguished panel has been put in together today. I wish the government was there, because I think the very perspective of my discussion would have been focused towards the government and the action plan they would form for Tamil Nadu. But I really, I'll take it up from where Sanjoy left. And Sanjoy really said that it has the cultural aspect and the creative economy that needs to be built up in Tamil Nadu to leverage on the potential Tamil Nadu has. And I come from the same, in fact, I was actually wanting to speak a lot on culture, but I have been saying and harping on the fact when it comes to promotion of a particular state. Well, I will not talk too much about people going out of Tamil Nadu, because they will go out when they have to go out and where they have to go out. My perspective as domestic tourism personality is to ensure that we have more and more people visiting Tamil Nadu. And what do they do? What besides Yarkod, Kodaikanal, or for that matter of fact, Uttarakhand? There is so much potential, as Sanjoy said. Culturally, I think Tamil Nadu is a very rich state, from its dances to its heritage, to its sports, to its regions. For example, and we have not been able to, the government has not able, the government as such, and I say government here because the private sector is playing a role in terms of developing hotels and developing their and doing their own bit. But what I would want to do is today bring in intellectual properties into these state governments. They need to highlight on intellectual property. Unless and until you do develop intellectual properties, you are not going to be doing justice to the offerings of this state product. There is so much that, from its one side, it's covered with it has a Indian Ocean, and the other side it has a Bay of Bengal. It has a Chettinad region. Now I know I have traveled once in Chettinad region. Chettinad is so culturally rich, so much of heritage to offer there. Besides all this religion tourism, there is so much available in Chettinad region. There isn't, I don't think you will recall of one festival that happens in Chettinad region where people come over and try to visit that festival and understand what is Chettinad cuisine, what is Chettinad tiles, what is Chettinad, you have something there, they have these paintings, what is called Thanjavur paintings that happen so they all emerge out of this region. Similar, Tamil Nadu is everywhere. We want to understand that there is a holiday tourism. Where can we go for a holiday? That is one small aspect of the whole tourism. Holiday is only one small aspect of the whole tourism. We can create bigger festivals wherein we will be able to engage people who offer everything that the state has to offer, and people will then come over and visit those states. In India, I have been telling everybody, how many festivals do you know where people go to? You can't even name 5. Every state government has to create 2 or 3 major festivals, make them as intellectual properties and highlight. So there has to be a purpose. Once there is a purpose, you have to have an objective, and then form some action plans and actually get doing this. And if the government is not doing that, I've already been telling this to Fiki, that we as tourism managers need to get together, conceive intellectual properties in each state, highlight it, promote it, push it, hire, get people like Lakshmi on board, who can write about that festival, and then start promoting those festivals so that people are aware that this is what the country has to offer. The Prime Minister the other day said, my only regret in life is I could not learn Tamil, the oldest language, one of the oldest civilizations and cultures in the world. So this is one aspect that could be highlighted. Sanjoy said about Bharatnatyam being an export property in terms of culture. There is a requirement of the tourism people getting together, talk less, plan more, act more. I mean, even in a platform like this, what are we trying to actually achieve? We'll all speak, we'll all get together, we'll all highlight something, and we'll go back, present a paper to the government. This government is not speaking right now because they are now in an election mode. They will come back, the paper will come up for a review, maybe one or two things will happen and they'll forget about it. When do we get real in this country? When do we get real? When do we all get together? I mean, you said Shobha has been promoting some wonderful resorts across the country, and there are like real good picks in each state or each city. Excellent. She's doing her bit. I am doing my bit as a tourism promoter. But why can't we all get together and leave the government behind and tell the government that, look, this is what we are planning to do. All you do is help us in doing the right publicity for it, engage PR firm to do the right publicity for it, and highlight the attributes of the destination so that people are aware of it. As I said, tourism is beyond holidays. It's meetings, it's conventions. Chennai has now a very big convention center, but how many other convention centers it has? I don't know how many of you have driven. I've cycled on the road from Chennai all the way to Pondicherry. Now look at that whole belt. If you build in right entertainment spots on that belt and create a convention center, however temporary it can be, look at the potential that the state has. And we all know every Indian state has potential. But what is the action plan? And how do we monitor that action plan? And how do we actually put it into execution and achieve our objectives? My functioning style will always be in FICCI to ensure that we will be able to create and curate a few tourism festivals where we actually build them, highlight the offerings of the state in terms of music, food, culture, art, handicrafts, artisans, put all of that together, highlight it. And I'm sure maybe in year 1, you will have 200 visitors, but in year 10, you could have 20,000 visitors. And that's how this will get highlighted. And that is what my objective will be as the FICCI co-chairman for domestic tourism, to basically ensure that we actually draft out a plan, and we, with the help of FICCI, we actually set out to execute it. Over to you, Ashish.
Thank you, Naveen. And there is no denying the fact that there is a
need. Can I just add a quick thing to what Naveen?
Yeah, Sanjay, go ahead.
Naveen, like you said, 20,000. Look at Jaipur. 13 years, we've gone from 7,000 to 500,000.
Yes.
Physically, contributing over 120 crores into Jaipur's economy every year. And now that we're digital, of course, it's gone to 10 million, but forget that because that doesn't have a GDP contribution to the state. But we have to be, and I feel that Tamil Nadu is poised to do many times that.
Much more.
We're able
much
to
more.
work together to be able to do this. But the problem,
because it has everything.
Yeah, they will only want to tender and they won't allow for this IP thing. Therein lies the problem. That's the challenge that you have to, or we have to.
But Sanjoy, that is exactly what I'm trying to work on. And my objective will be, I don't know how much I'll succeed, but I will try my best that even if the state government is not, tendering for, or if they're tendering for it or they're not doing justice to it, I think at FICCI's level, we all get together and pick up a few states. We may not be able to pick up all the states in such a short duration of my tenure, but if we pick up even 5 states and create IPs there and actually focus, we'll lay a foundation for the future. And that's what I'm going to do. I mean, you rightly said, look at where Jaipur is. Look at Sunburn. A simple festival created so much of demand in Goa. It went to Pune. It still was full. It came back to Goa. So today the need is intellectual properties of tourism. That is what we have to do, and that is where India lacks.
Yeah,
Ashish.
Yeah, Naveen, absolutely so. And if I may further add, the issue has been our travel, tourism, hospitality, and the entire industry, not to talk about ministries and government, have been so highly fragmented that each one has worked in silos. If you're a travel company, you're so dispersed, you're all over the country. I think that's, yes, there is a need for a binding force which puts the dots together and maybe drive, even if it's a public-private partnership in many areas. It could be purely partnership of private establishment in area, but somebody needs to be a catalyst. Some organization needs to be driving this together in the one objective. And I think that's where the true India and true tourism will emerge for a future foundation.
Ashish, Prime Minister himself said that government has no business to be a business.
Yes.
So I think what they need to do is they need to get real. All tourism boards in India need to get real. Get the private sector to build the tourism sector. All they need to do is, and all I want them to do is, whatever budgets they have, just put that in publicity.
Absolutely.
Stay simple. Just put that in publicity and
Naveen,
let the private sector do it.
Right. And somewhere I think, Naveen, people like all of you on the panel and many more outside need to come out of our own little space we have created for ourselves and really bind things together.
Certainly.
Well, thank you very much for coming in, Naveen. And we have Sundar Singaram here with us, and Sundar being based in Chennai, and I've forgotten, for maybe almost 30 years, he's been in the DMC space in south of India and Tamil Nadu specifically. And I think nobody knows Tamil Nadu perhaps better than Sundar himself. So Sundar, over to you. You like to tell us a few things? You're on mute. Sundar?
Thank you, Ashish. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. I think Mr. Sanjay Roy and Naveen Kundu set the pace very nicely, talking about the creative economy and the cooperation with the government. So I am being the founder of Tamil Nadu Travel Mart Society. This government in Tamil Nadu, whichever party comes in, it is not that difficult to work with them. This is my personal experience in the past 3 years. Now I'm being the director of South India Hotels and Restaurant Association. I am almost every day in their doorsteps to knock the doors. So it is not that difficult to work with them. As Mr. Sanjay Roy said, none of us are collectively willing to work. That is a major problem that I would see, and as Mr. Naveen Kundu supplemented, okay, now we do this webinar, seminar, whatever it is, and we make a report and give it to the government and we move on. So where is the follow-up and where is the solution for all the problems that we discussed? But the government is more than willing to work with us, which many people don't understand. When as Mr. Ashish said rightly, that when we go to them as fragmented, then they have limitations. So this is what my personal experience. When we wanted to market Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu was not marketed at all. But however, Tamil Nadu has been #1 in domestic arrival and international arrival for the past 4 years consecutively. The difference between the domestic tourism first and second place is about 11 crore footfalls. So this is the difference. Tamil Nadu is ahead of tourist arrival into the state. But when we really wanted to market Tamil Nadu, whatever we discussed, Mr. Sanjay Raj said, or Mr. Naveen Kundu said, that we approached the government. The government was more than willing to work with us. And you will not believe that we have done 2 sets of Tamil Nadu Travel Mart getting buyers all over the world. And you won't believe the Tamil Nadu Travel Mart was formed in 2017. Till 2020, it was funded 2.5 crores by the government. Can you just believe it?
Yeah.
So see, the problem here is there is no consistency from the private sector to follow these things. When I'm an office bearer, if I'm passionate and I'm continuously, consistently following it up, but then after that, the officers are bound to change. There will be good officers, there will be bad officers, there will be moderate officers, but it is the industry's duty to keep taking the agenda to the government and make sure that it is happening. So that is the problem that I see in Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu, as everybody said, Tamil Nadu has got all potential. Tamil Nadu has got the only state has got 5 UNESCO monuments. The only state has got 4 international airports. The Chennai has been awarded by UNESCO for the creative city for music. We can keep talking about it has got about 1,000 kilometers of pristine beach line. There are lovely new products, beautiful products have come into Tamil Nadu. In fact, the Shobha handles some of the products, there is a resort near Kanyakumari, one near Coimbatore. So these are all mind-blowing places. For example, I can tell you a property in Ooty, which has got its own horses, 50 horses, and they have a horse track. You know who goes there? The top celebrity, the actors and actors, they go there, and it is an exclusive. But whereas it is a shame that it is an USP for Tamil Nadu, but whereas this has been kept very exclusive, and the management doesn't want nobody to come there and visit the property. So you have to go on a dirty track for 2 kilometers in their jeep or whatever. So these are all the things that we have in Tamil Nadu. So, but again, going back to the point that we have to consistently, from the private sector, that we have to work with the government, and that is the only solution. Now, the topic is post corona scenario, but we are talking about the new normal. But I don't know how many of us really wanted to adapt the new normal. Everybody, every DMC in the country wanted the same old, the turnover or the profits, they wanted it to happen. And I'm in some other groups, they have been continuously fighting that the government is not doing anything. They are comparing Europe, the Europe is giving so much of salary to the people and all that. We can't really compare Europe and India, straight away. So we have different problems in our country. For example, in this pandemic time, in the borders were encroached by the neighborhood countries, the government has to spend money there. So you can't really, help one particular sector, to fund them on a directly, to the salaries or the MSME. There is no clarity on MSME, that the government has come with a lot of things with the MSME. So we are trying to, clarify the MSME where really we get some support from the government. So I just wanted to, talk few points about the Tamil Nadu has got about pilgrim tourism. See, there is a lot of pilgrim destinations like Rameshwaram, Meenakshi Temple, and various other things are there. Mr. Naveen Kundu was talking about festivals. You go to Madurai, every day there is a festival. You don't need to really create any festival in Tamil Nadu. All over Tamil Nadu, the policemen guard the deities, and then it can go as a procession in the crowded, city of Madurai. Shobha knows very well. So we don't need to create anything. So only thing is how to really market it, and the consistency to work with the government, so to take it to the international lobby. So this is what really we have to do. And not only that, Tamil Nadu has got beautiful golf courses, which is the year round you can play. When it is summer, you can play it in Ooty or Kodaikanal. When it is winter, you can play it in Coimbatore or Chennai. So beautiful heritage golf courses that we have. So we did had a direct flight from Japan to Chennai. ANA was operating. So Japanese travel a lot on golf tourism. Entire Thailand was flooded by Japanese into the golf tourism. So but none of us really tap to these potentials in Tamil Nadu. Now there is a new founding, which is a Keeladi, which is a civilization in the banks of the river Vaigai, which is 2,500 years old, just lying on the ground. So we have not done anything to bring it to the world. If it is in Europe or America, this scenario is completely different. But we are also talking to the government. The government has got limitation on funding the projects. So these are all some of the beautiful things that we can talk about Tamil Nadu. So the tour operator also should think about how to get into this unorganized sector. See, in this post-pandemic, so the pilgrim tourism cannot be avoided. So there is always a space, but we have a mindset that we wanted to work with the white skins and we wanted the fat margins. We don't want to get into this segments. There are some companies like Veena World or some other companies in Bombay and all that. They have huge infrastructure to move people, domestically, and which is a very big number which is coming into Tamil Nadu. But unfortunately, none of the DMCs, so-called big DMCs, they don't want to get into this domestic segment. So Tamil Nadu has got all opportunities in the post-pandemic era, that the pilgrim tourism cannot be stopped by anyone, because people do travel. We have that Arupadai Vidu circuit, we have the Navagraha circuit, so we can keep talking about it. So people should think about how to give some value-added services in the existing movement happening, which is a very big number. The domestic market is a very big number into Tamil Nadu. So how to get into that space and make it really value-added. So this is the little thing that every DMC should think about it till that the normal days comes back. So I think with these few words that I leave to Ashish. And thank you.
Yeah, Sundar. Sundar, I'll just supplement what you said on the foreign tourists. And I had the opportunity of living and working in Europe in the 90s to promote inbound into India. It was so unfortunate that the first itinerary of a visitor, a DMC promoted overseas, was north of India, and south of India or Tamil Nadu was only the second visit.
Yes.
Right. So
the golden triangle.
Yeah. And leaving aside the German market, which were very discerning travelers, and they would want to go to South India first. I've also had the opportunities, and I'll tell you the point I'm trying to make. I've also had the opportunity of having Princess Cruises and P&O Cruises, who I've worked for. They're round-the-world cruises touching on Chennai and several other ports. And let me tell you, my experience of being in Chennai was pathetic, because a night before the cruise of 1,500 people were supposed to be embarking to go with 30 buses lined up. Some cold container had come and dumped coal onto the port, and we had to get it cleaned up to make for these foreign tourist arrivals. The point I'm trying to make, I think Tamil Nadu itself has a good place to be in round-the-world cruises itinerary by itself as Chennai as a port. Plus the inbound, which you're saying with 4 international airports, should now, Tamil Nadu should portray itself in the international market as the choice, the first choice of tourism. And probably the operating model needs to change and not just rely on some European or American tour operator to decide what part of India they should promote or not promote. I think a proactive stance needs to be taken to be able to showcase the country, and not as a journal entity, is all I had to add from that. You have something?
No, I do agree that regarding the Chennai port, it is a major port for coal movement and for the Hyundai cars and the Ford cars. So it is very unfortunate when it is a rainy day. It is complete mess in the Chennai port. I did handle some of the cruise liners, and we also found this difficulties. But some of the cruise liners are unfortunately moved out of Chennai, calling Chennai port. But some moved to Tuticorin port, which is one of the very, very good passenger-friendly port today. So yeah, these things has to be taken to the government. See, again, somebody handles from Delhi or somewhere, so the local body has to really realize this potential, and they have to initiate some sort of a dialogue with the port trust authorities and the concerned ministry here. So who has done what? Nothing. We were only been okay. It is a very bad experience. I did handle an ANK cruise liner to Chennai. It is the same story. But who has really taken up these things with the government to get a solution? Like Mr. Naveen Kundu says that we are very good in identifying the problem, but what is the solution for this? But there should be a consistent approach to the government. And Tamil Nadu, I am repeating again, the Tamil Nadu government is not that bureaucrat comparing to any other government, and you can easily approach them. And see, the government needs an avenue to work. This is my learning. I may be completely wrong. The government needs an avenue to work. If the right people don't get connected to the government, the wrong people get connected to the government. So they guide the government in a wrong way, and we all as a spectator stand out and then criticize the government is doing this, doing that. So what have you done to guide the government to do it in the right way, which has never happened for so many decades? in Tamil Nadu is concerned. So we have been living with what our ancestors have built, 1,000-year-old temples, and we have been just marketing the night ceremony in the temple or whatever, So we have enough. So people, the other destinations started taking a share of it. New destination came in Kerala, like Vagaman or Kumrakam. When I started my tourism, after Madurai, it is only Cochin. But now then Tekidi came, Kumrakam came. So the 15 days is fixed. So everybody, pitching for a 1 day. So the initial days, the Madurai had 2 nights. But over that period, Madurai, now it is 1 night and it has become a day trip for many people in Madurai. So we have to, I personally blame, like Mr. Navin Kundu said, we have to work together and we have to consistently, have a infrastructure to address these issues with the government and parallelly market these products to the international stage, which is the only solution for it. So you can ask me what I have done. I have done whatever from my side. The 3 years with the Tamil Nadu Travel Mart, day in, day out, I was with the government. But now I have taken up an assignment with Sierra. So we have been continuously, so September 1, we opened the hotels. Otherwise, the government doesn't want to open the hotel, but they believe the hotels are not safe to open it. So we made the hotels to open. So we continuously went to the CM's office. Wherever we have to go, we knocked the doors and then we got things done. So we have to, make that attempt on a consistent basis. That is the only solution as far as my concern. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. And I'm very pleased that we have a very plain speak panel, and I hope somebody would be listening. But just to add on the cruise terminal, I mean, when one can have investment into railway terminals, bullet trains, airports, why can't a passenger terminal be developed the same way for cruise liner in Tuticorin or Chennai or anywhere else you want to?
Yeah.
But that aside, over to Shobha Mohan, who, like I mentioned, is founder of Rare Hotels, and I particularly found them very rare. You want to tell us more, Shobha?
Yes, thank you so much, Ashish. Thank you, Sundar. Thank you, Naveen. Thank you, Sanjoy, for kickstarting this conversation. I am the founder partner for Rare India. In fact, my second partner sits in Chennai, and this is home state for me. Though I grew up in Andhra Pradesh, but I do believe that Tamil Nadu has a huge potential, and I see that as a glass half full, which just in these times when we are inundated with a lot of other issues where tourism is concerned, like over tourism and overexposure, I think Tamil Nadu is a breath of fresh air. There is so much to talk about Tamil Nadu. It just gives me goosebumps. Having said that, I must say that we still need, Tamil Nadu does need its spot under sunshine and stardust, because for long it was an extension, or it was a secondary option to Kerala. Right, and that also after the north has been done. So the DMC operators, and coming to the private sector that you're talking about, and Sundar, a great fan of Sundar, and a lot of people like him, it has been their personal endeavors to actually put out very, very unique programs and unique ideas and unique itineraries for Tamil Nadu. I mean, and it's some of them don't even don't even roll off the tongues of a lot of North Indian DMCs, right? And the private sector has done a lot of great work, and I completely agree with you, Sundar, that it is we have to come together, put out the blueprint, the roadmap, and then probably give a very consolidated idea to the government. And I know that in the last 3 years, the Tamil Nadu Travel Mart has done great work. I mean, I have seen something very, very new every time I've been there. That said, on the hotels front, I market Swatma in Tanjore, and it's a little bit of a fairy tale story for Tanjore and with Swatma there, because before Swatma came in, Tanjore was almost a no-night destination, probably one night. And just a product, just a private sector enterprise like Swatma coming in, pulling in everything from the codes for Bharatanatyam to Carnatic music at Tiruvayur, just about 30 kilometers outside, bringing in the Veena makers, the Tamil cuisine, the Tamil Brahminical cuisine. Not everybody knows, it's so confused with Chettinad and Kerala cuisine. The bronze the Chola bronze that you spoke about, the Tanjore paintings, the influence of the Marathas, the storytelling that Swatma brought in makes Tanjore a 3-night destination, if not more, for people who are discerning. I spent a Pongal with a bunch of travel agents there, and they could have spent 4 days there, just going through what a city goes through during a festival like that. Secondly, I also want to tell you that there is a lot of the soft power that you spoke about, Ashish, is, I think, the strength of Tamil Nadu. We talk about religiousness, but I think as a state, Tamil Nadu is one of those places where you can drive down, cycle down lanes and still see a Ganesha. I mean, there might be an Aishwarya Rai store or something like that, but it is still a store dedicated to Ganesha. There is an inherent spirituality about Tamil Nadu, which is still not explored. The second thing about Tamil Nadu is, and when you're talking about pandemic, I must say, wellness, where everybody is talking about, harping about wellness and how wellness can really contribute to driving force in economy, and that doesn't necessarily need to rely on the incoming tourists. Tamil Nadu has its own special wellness tradition in the form of Siddha. Again, this was brought to fore by Swatma. There is Siddha, and the second thing is about everyday wellness. I mean, small things that have been a part of my growing up, and Lakshmi and Sundar will agree to it. The ritual oil baths, I mean, which were a part of our daily life. It was not something that we did it especially, to sit somewhere for 3 days and come away. These are things that have already been blueprinted, and there are private sectors really working in this area. And I think all of this put together really makes Tamil Nadu a fascinating destination, just waiting to be explored. There are plantations. We promote plantations in Valpare and in Kunur, in the Nilgiris outside. They're called the Sinadarai bungalows. Great amount of plantation history there for people who'd like to listen and go there. The road journeys are nothing like anywhere else in the world. I mean, he was talking about driving from Chennai to Pondicherry. There is Pondicherry to Nagapattinam to Karaikudi. There is the length and breadth of these areas, and every nook and corner you have not only the steeple of a temple, you have a rangoli outside. There's a lot of soft power in Tamil Nadu that needs to be explored. And what you talked about, Sanjay, about the creative economy is huge. I mean, absolutely huge. The one thing that amazes me when I go to Chennai every time, you are not in a state that is trying to rejig itself to welcome you. It is welcoming. That is what Chennai is. There is this. They are not. They're not. I won't say ashamed. I'd say they are completely. They are completely okay with their vibhudis and their veshtis and things like that. They are very, very happy to welcome you as they are. The genuinity, the authenticity in Tamil Nadu still exists, and I think that is the huge potential going forward. The cuisine of Tamil Nadu. There's another place near Coimbatore. In fact, not many people know that Coimbatore has a textile museum. There are a huge number of museums there. Around Erode and Salem, there are incidences that the Romans had come there, and there's a little bit of that huge background to how cotton exports started way back in those times. So all these have been documented, including monoliths. Tamil Nadu has probably the largest strength of monoliths that can be explored. So if you break down tourism if you put tourism into one silo as a 2-night here, 3-night here, and come out of there, I think, that is the be all and end all of tourism anywhere. But if you start looking at the layers that a state can offer, And that is my major peeve again, all tourism boards, is that there is a temple, there's a tiger, there's a dancer, and there is one heritage relic or the other. So there is so much potential. And as of all of you have rightly pointed out, it is the marketing where the money has to be spent. Tamil Nadu has a lot of creativity. Like I said, Sundar and his team have done marvelously with, highlighting Silambu, for instance. I heard about it recently. I've heard about it a long time ago. Coffees in the morning, the stories that can come out. I mean, I can talk on and on about what Tamil Nadu can offer, but my memories of Tamil Nadu go back, going back to Tanjore and Vetambadi during my childhood days, and waking up to the smell of fresh coffee every day in the morning. And I remember when I wanted to promote Tanjore, when a hotel called itself Tanjore, and it came to me, my father said, "What's wrong with you? It's not Tanjore. So please, till they learn to spell Tanjore right, you will not take up a hotel there." And the minute Swatma came in and Kritika said, "Shobha, I am starting a hotel in Tanjore," I said, "Well, we are on." And that's the beauty and magic of Tamil Nadu. Great potential for the domestic market as well. The Navagraha temples that Sundar spoke about, I have personally created itineraries for people, for Indians from Bombay, from Andhra Pradesh, from Calcutta, for people to go and explore. And in this times when people want to check into their zodiacs all the time, I think these kind of ideas just need to be put out there effectively, and a blueprint set out to the government. And I think we are just waiting for things to happen in Tamil Nadu.
Right. Shobha, I must add here is properties such as yours is what you're doing for the communities around the hotels and homestays. It's not necessarily. So I'll give an example. I did a project for Usha Martian Industries, which develop aerial ropeways, Usha Breco, in say Haridwar, Chandi Devi, Mansa Devi, and they carry pilgrimages from the base to the hilltop, right? And the amount of communities which got developed because the aerial ropeways drew people to be able to go up to the hill, whether it's the photographer, whether it's the pool wala, whether it's exactly, there is a whole buzzing environment around it. But the point here I'm trying to really make about, and since I'm not familiar with the topography of Tamil Nadu, we've been talking about temples, we've been talking about ancient sites, etc. I don't know if there is a cause and need to do a study to be able to put certain aerial ropeways and connectivity between point A to B to be able to access those sites. Because in many parts of the country, some of these ancient temples are actually not accessible by a foot. So they lie in wilderness. Yeah, people want to go there, but it's a treacherous climb to be able to get there. So perhaps there is a cause of people who know Tamil Nadu well to work on a build, operate, transfer basis to develop connectivity between the base and the hill for the temple. Shobha?
Yeah, absolutely. Ashish, the thing is, this is my belief that whenever a heritage project, or whether it's a temple or it's a hotel or it's a tourism project that is developed, everything around it and everybody around it that feeds into the idea of hospitality or tourism actually contribute, not only contribute, they are also affected positively by that particular project or product, right? So completely agree with you, though I think for most of the tricky temples, I think Tamil Nadu, there is the Winch in Payani temple, I know, Sundar. There are other temples where you probably need to walk to, because that's the best way to see, to look into the eyes of the goddess. But I think where temples are concerned, Tamil Nadu is kind of pretty much got it right, even for some of the smaller temples, because that kind of culture where all of us, or we all have a family, have a family temple, we go back there regularly, we probably have a wedding or a mundan ceremony back in our family temple. This allows, I still contribute to my father's family temple, outside of about 100 kilometers outside of Tanjore. So that kind of thing still exists, but like you rightly pointed out, these temples can become hubs of something more. For instance, an Arangetram set in that particular temple town, for people to come and use that as a backdrop. The ideas around these places are immense. Plus, you map them out as special food stops. I mean, there is the halwa, the Tiruchinappalli halwa. I think there is those kind of thing. The rock temple is easily accessible again in the in Trichy. The idea is to map everything that an area can allow you, like just between Tanjavur, Trichy, and Swamimalai, and Mayiladuthurai, which is Mayavaram, there is immense potential to create its own textile trail, a temple trail, a food trail, a biking trail, the famous Indian road journey. There is a lot of that. So mapping is to be done, and like I said, there is only a few tour operators, whether it is for inbound or for domestic, which is why I think people like me have a job, because these are stories we pick up and we keep telling them again and again. The potential is huge. Now, how we map them up, I'm always available to work on these things and go and work with the government, whether it's Andhra Pradesh or Ladakh or Tamil Nadu, it doesn't matter. But how is the question. One of the things I always say is, maybe we have a body that that comes together. We create like an advisory where people sit together, and maybe FICCI is that particular body. We go there, put all our ideas together. The private sector moves it. And then one person, once it is a success, then you go on to the government and say, listen, we did this and this is very good. Like I was talking to you about Siddha. Everybody jumps into the Ayurveda bandwagon, but there is so much every part of our country has to offer. And Siddha is a great example. So I completely agree with you. There will be, and there will always be, these smaller stores and shops and smaller enterprises that can add to the larger picture of tourism.
Ashish, can I
Yeah,
just make just add to?
Please go ahead.
So just two things. One is, of course, that there's a lot of mapping that's already been done. So if you look at people like Sahapedia, etc., they've mapped particular areas and particular traditional craft forms or performing art forms and knowledge. So some of that is already in place. And as you rightly said, I think we really need to pull these things together, because it already exists and we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Absolutely.
But the second thing, Ashish, that I would certainly encourage for future is, in this larger creative economy sector, look at education. I mean, look at Chennai, for example, Madras Presidency College and its ilk, the Harvard of the South. And that's again an area that needs to be leveraged. I mean, my own father studied in Presidency College, because my grandfather, when he came back from America and England in the early 1920s, was the chief conservator of forest of Madras Presidency. Now, the kind of wealth that we have in terms of education resources down south is huge, again waiting to be leveraged. And I think we keep forgetting that that too must be an input when we're looking at either attracting new people. It's like what a University of York or Harvard or Monash does today in India, right? They set up their centers here, they market their universities, they sell their stuff. What's stopping us from doing so? I mean, that's the other area that we need to look at, and we keep forgetting to
Yes, and when I meant advisory, the thing is, the mapping is good, but it has to be in such a form and format that the DMC operator sitting in the north can easily, it has to be easily be able to, he has to be translated into their brochures, into their marketing. Otherwise, typically marketing brochures all of them look the same to me. There's the Taj Mahal, or there's a tiger, or who puts a Hampi out there in their first page of their, or in the cover page of their brochure? I mean that kind of mapping that really helps the tourism. Even temples in Tamil Nadu, they'll put the Brihadiswara temple all the time, or the columns in the Madurai temple. But there is so much more, so that I meant mapping in a way that the tourism business, I'm talking from the tourism perspective.
Yeah, Chidambaram is an example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Chidambaram, though I must say Hampi is becoming much more, you're seeing people put it on the map, but I don't think you're doing
look
that.
Look at that one, where Hampi is concerned, one article in New York Times, and that's it. Boy. So, so which is why, again, my point that the government starts looking at their marketing budgets, and Lakshmi. So there's Lakshmi there to tell more stories.
Strategy, Shobha, more than their marketing
strategies. Yeah.
The strategy is
Yeah.
the problem. It's not so much the budget, it's the strategy.
And,
If you get your strategy right, you can carry on spending money as they do. They tender
the segmentation
money.
and the strategy.
What do you do?
Yeah, but let's not forget the Tamil film industry. 2002, when I used to work for a particular travel company, I had a Sunday off. And the highlight of suggestion I got whole of Sunday was to visit Rajnikant's house from the Hotel Kansai. So, when we talk about Bollywood being what it is, to the NRI or PIO population, I think that the Tamil film industry does hold a particular importance, and so does for the rest of the industry. Yeah, but we'll probably leave it here to Lakshmi to tell her stories and tales. I think she's got many of them. Over to you, Lakshmi.
Thank you. So nice listening to everyone out here, and so many stalwarts. I feel like a kid in a in a candy store, because this is about Tamil Nadu. This is my home state. I've brought up Chennai. I call it Madras actually. So sorry if I'm politically wrong, but I come from Madras, and I remember jibes when I was growing up saying, "What do you have in Madras to travel to? You have the Gindi Park, and you have Mahabs. Otherwise, you have to go to Pondicherry, So, and we had cousins in Bangalore. And so, besides, of course, Ooty and other places, it's like, the Madras itself was sounded not so cool as a destination. But today everybody's been talking about festivals. And today there is the Madras Festival. I don't know, nobody's talked about Madras Day. And it is an example of the citizens of the city coming together and doing this. It's done in August for about 2 weeks. It is the birth of the city, the birth of the settlement called Madras. There are walking tours, there is speeches, it's a massive celebration. It's been going on for so many years. The entire city comes together. Even this year, they partially went digital. There's so much of heritage tours. There is so much of, schools doing exhibitions. There is people doing talks, people doing walks, people doing photo tours, people doing nature walks, people doing birding tours, naturalists coming together, theater coming together. It is a classic example of how, and unfortunately, the government hasn't done anything about it, but there is an opportunity. Media has actually taken it up. Hindu does a lot of articles around it. It's amazing because Chennai has so much, Madras has so much to offer. What started as a colonial identity of the city, people started talking about, churches. People started doing St. Thomas, churches rounds. People started talking about, Fort St. George tours. People started talking about doing day trips to Pulikat. So there was so much opportunity. The Madras Festival, if that can be put, I know there's Margari is bigger, but Madras Festival is something that's been happening for 2 weeks for the last 5-6 years. And I'm sure Mr. Singaram would know about it. It's an opportunity for us to kind of develop it further. But having talked about Madras, I have to say that my roots actually are down south, Tirunelveli. I come from a village called Kalade Kurchi, which is on the banks of the Tamrabarni. There is Ambasamudram, which is my mother's village, and there is Kalade Kurchi. And that place is a treasure trove of destinations. Nobody talks about it. Can you give me one brochure that talks about KMTR, Kalakadamundandurai Wildlife Sanctuary, that talks about Tamrabarni, that talks about Manjole tea plantation, that talks about Kudravatti, that talks about the innumerable waterfalls from Manimuttar. I know Kutralam is being promoted right now with Tenkasi and Soho coming in, but do people talk about Manimuttar and Papnasam? Of course, it was in the news recently because of the floods, but so much to talk about. And the Agraharams in those villages there, and the communities that live because of the Tamrabarni, the river that supports these communities. I'm sure, Shobha, you might have had, or you might have seen these Pattumadai maps. Every bridal, it's part of the bridal trousseau, or anybody from that village, as a trousseau, the name of the couple is always etched on these mats. And when I went down south and when I went to my villages, I went to all these little villages around. And it's like Kutch or Bhuj, each village has a craft to talk about. And it's very sad because Pattumadai, which once had a community of weavers around it, now there are hardly a handful of families. And in one small shop, I have written about it in Nat Geo and in the Hindu and of course on my blog, I saw this old man who was from Queen Elizabeth. Now, nobody in our country knows about Pathamadai Mats, but he gets a citation from Queen Elizabeth. How ironic can it get? You know, and there is, so these are sustainable tourism opportunities. I got very excited when I went there, and I actually wanted to actually start off a tourism project. And I said, you know, let me just lease out, because we still have our ancestral home in Kaldakurchi, and we have a few relatives out there. And these are all traditional agraharams. So we said, let's, you know, probably lease out some old homes and do a tour, you know, because some of these places are actually not allowed for tourists, be it Banganga or Papanasam, which is in a way good, because we don't want to make it mass tourism, but it can be regulated. You have to go to Ambasamudram and get permission to visit these places. And there's an opportunity to do sustainability. And ironically, when we think of Western Ghats, we think of Kerala and Karnataka, and maybe the Nilgiris to some extent in Tamil Nadu. But we don't realize that the Western Ghats actually originates from Tamil Nadu. It actually, the KMTR is like the beginning of it, the Kalakadu Mundandurai Tiger Sanctuary. And that whole belt is filled with such rich culture, heritage, temples, communities, rustic tourism, wildlife tourism, lion-tailed macaques, birding. I mean, name it and you have it. And just going for a walk, like we live on the, we live in Karakurchi. So we know my uncle and I used to go for a walk along the banks of the river on the downhill, you know, it's like the downhill of the Manimuttar. And we would just sit there and just, just kind of enjoy the view. And this is where typically you'd see a girl, you know, wearing a sari or a half sari, you know, where coming in a cycle, you know, or going in a, you know, two-wheeler, very typical traditional stereotype Tamil Nadu images, but never talked about, you know, in brochures and things like that, the kind of empowerment that they have, the kind of, you know, the way they would go out on these hills. And Manjolai, the tea plantation that is there. Yes, of course, there's Valparai and there is Kunnur and the Erkard coffee. But Manjolai as a tea plantation is again amazing. And it's right in the middle of nowhere. And then we also went to this beautiful place called Kudravati. It's, in my opinion, one of the best kept secrets. And if you just, it's a windswept grassland. And if you just climb up there, and there is a viewing point and there's a forest guest house there, you can see almost 4 dams there, 3 to 4 dams. And it is mind-blowing just spending time out there. So there is, what I'm trying to say is that there is so many of these destinations in Tamil Nadu, and we are, yes, looking at the obvious ones, but there are hidden secrets. And ironically, when we talk about down south, they're always clubbed with Kerala and promoted as Kerala, but they don't realize that Tenkasi or Tirunelveli, Thoothukudi, of course, is obviously well known today. That whole Nagarkoil belt, that whole Kanyakumari belt. I happen to go on what is called a Nanjal Nadu tour, because everybody knows about the Cholas, the Cheras, and the Pandyas, and of course the Pallavas. But you know, these 4 kingdoms have so many temples and heritage places, forts, all of this scattered in this region in and around Kanyakumari. And what is more interesting is I did a course on Jainism in Tamil Nadu, and I was very surprised to learn that Jainism is an indigenous community. It's not similar to what we understand as Jainism in the north. So these Jains have their own cults. These Jains, in fact, even have goddesses. These Jains have their own sites. And some of these amazing, mind-boggling cave temples have some brilliant paintings even today. And these sites are like so rich and so culturally lost. And not any, I mean, there's no one who's even doing any kind of trails around them. So and we were also talking about temples earlier. Yes, there are a lot of heritage temples and there are a lot of well-known temples. But what about the quintessential Ayanar shrine? I mean, these are shrines, the guardian deities of every village in Tamil Nadu. And they look amazing. Or the terracotta, horses of Chettinad shrines. So if you actually look into Tamil Nadu, like Shobha mentioned, there are layers and layers and layers and layers. And these make for brilliant stories. They make for great photo books. They make for great coffee tables. In fact, currently, I think one of the NGOs is working on a coffee table book on the Kaldakurchi, and they wrote to me saying, do you have any photographs of, women, making applams, papads? They sun it. They make it at home and they sun it on on their veranda, so the thinnai as they're called. And he said, you have some photos, and I said, I'll just look them up and I'll send it. So we were also talking about festivals earlier, and we were talking about the need to do religious festivals. the Tamilians around the world celebrate Thaipusam. We have Tiruchendur right in the heart of Tamil Nadu. You have Muruga, who is the Tamil god. He's like the patron god. And the Surapadman event, which is a massive event in the Tiruchendur temple, is never talked about, is never marketed, except for some DD channel showing it. So there is little snippets of culture and heritage and so many things that we could market. These things happen. It's not like you have to reinvent the wheel. You have to recreate it. It's only a question of how are you going to put this out on, out there, and how are we going to put together a product around it? How are we going to bring everybody together to market it? Unlike other destinations, we don't have to Tamil Nadu is rich in that sense. It has everything to offer. It's a question of just connecting the dots. And like Shobha said, create a kind of a committee, someone who brings in the operation, someone brings in the marketing, someone like you would help with storytelling, someone who would bring in, hotels and properties, and a DMC. And if all of us can just put this whole product together and take it up and say that these are 3-4 things that we could try in the post-COVID era. I just want to take a couple of more minutes. I'm sorry, I'm gushing too much, but I want to take a couple of more minutes to talk about one trip that I did. I love doing road trips in Tamil Nadu. So one of the road trips that I did was to drive around from Chennai to Nagapattinam. Nothing very special about it, except that I said I wanted to actually discover all the lost colonies. I called it the Coromandel Colonies Tour. And I said this, I did it almost 10 years ago. And I said, almost every European power has had a colony in Tamil Nadu. Everybody, from the French to the Dutch to Danish, to everybody has got a history. In fact, I went looking for the original Fort David in Kadalur, where they say that when the British actually decided to take over Kadalur, they actually took a gun and they just shot over, and they said whatever land comes in is part of theirs. And the original old Fort David is like a completely broken down monument. And it is in the middle, or it's in the old Kadalur. It's not even in the new Kadalur. It's somewhere near the fishing port of Kadalur, and we actually went looking for it. So I wrote this whole thing in my blog. I also wrote about it in Yahoo and a couple of other newspapers. And I actually got the Navy very interested. They called me and they said, we didn't know that there was so much of maritime heritage in Tamil Nadu. And we would like to do a coffee table book around it. And we actually want to explore an opportunity of using the port and seeing whether we could do a cruise, whether we could actually connect all these ports together, because you have Porto Novo, you of course have Pondicherry, you of course have Karaikal, and you have you have Tranquebar, of course, Tarangamwadi. You have all of these places, and can we actually stitch it together and do like a part cruise, part land kind of a, we would like to explore something like this. So I was very excited, but of course nothing came out of it. But the point is that at least somebody had that idea and wanted to take that forward. And I would love it if something like that comes across. And since we were talking about the harbor and we were talking about the port, I was 18, 19-year-old, wide-eyed when I took a cruise to Andamans. Nobody even heard about it at that point of time. I took a ship from Chennai Harbor to Port Blair. It took 4-5 days. It was not one of the best experiences, I must say, but I had the time of my life. But there are opportunities. Not many people talk about, developing the whole cruises, the whole port itself. In fact, there's a Royal Yacht Club, the old premises of it. There's a wall there which shows a little, point where the German ship Emden had actually bombed it during the First World War. Even now, there is that little spot out there which you can come and see. But most of these places, unfortunately, are closed to tourists, or it's only told through word of mouth, and some people can just go there. There's this beautiful it's called a Royal Mile, which juts out into the harbor, which at some point people were allowed to go and just stand there and just take in the scenery. And so there's, of course, now people are doing, my husband is an avid sailor, so he's been learning sailing there, and he's also been learning a bit of surfing, and he's a scuba diver, so he wants to go. And I think there is a company now which is promoting scuba diving in Chennai to, and talking about shipwreck sites in and around Chennai. So there are, I believe, so many different facets to it. Yes, we all talk about heritage and we all talk about dances and temples, but there's so much of birding, there's so much of, wildlife, there is culture, there's communities, there's opportunities to celebrate each and every city, like even cities like Madras, cities like Madurai. We were talking about, the ancient civilization site in Madurai. I was climbing the Samanar Hills when I went past it. And the interesting thing is, if everybody knows that Madurai was actually one of the hubs of ancient Tamil kingdom, it was the Sangam era. So the whole idea why it was called Sangam era is because all the poets and in the olden Pandyan days, they used to come together and discuss, literature, and they used to have like this assembly. That's why it was called Sangam of, literary. I mean, why not make that the literary hub? Not just relive the whole Sangam era, give it a modern twist and make it the whole literary, cultural center of Tamil Nadu, and create your own Jaipur Lit Fest as the Madurai Lit Fest and make it into this whole, poetry, dance, art, and there are lots of properties in Madurai today which are developing. And this way we can extend Madurai from 1 night to 3 days, because it was sad when I went to Madurai last year and they told me that from Madurai, they normally go off to Kerala and they don't even go to Chettinad or Rameshwaram. That's even a secondary or a tertiary, it's not even like in their list of priorities. So, so I can go on, and I would just end with this one last thing, which is, Ashish talked about films. And when I was in radio, when I was in television, I had to sell Tamil Nadu to my bosses, and I had to sell about saying that, the content that we have to do had to be different. So I actually did an entire presentation because it was very difficult to sell Tamil Nadu and Tamil culture and Tamil audiences to the Bombay bosses. So I actually did a whole presentation with Rajnikant, and just think of the potential of using film-based tours here, from the old studios to Maniratnam, who has marketed every destination. I mean, you talked about Valpara and Pollachi. He actually put it on the tourist map, So many Chettinad, which everybody does lovely tours of Chettinad. But when I was pitching a story to Chettinad, Shobha, I must tell you this, when I was pitching a story to Chettinad, they said, can you do actually on the film locations in Chettinad? So there is an opportunity to talk about destinations. We can do actually a film-based, a Kodambakkam tour, locations in Tamil Nadu based on, the whole film industry. And I think that would be really fun, because we are talking about, Abhishekams to Rajnikant posters, which can happen only in Tamil Nadu, to temples, to Khushbu, to, all kinds of, and even today, there are these old theaters which are still there. Forget the multiplexes, but you still have those local theaters. And just imagine experiencing them in the craziest avatar, of course, keeping infrastructure in check and stuff like that. So I personally think that, I can go on, and I don't want to take away all the time here. And I've written a lot of stories about Madras and Tamil Nadu. And there are many more stories that I could share. But I really think that there's so much to share, so many things to, talk about, so many new products to create, so many new destinations that one can do together. And obviously the existing destinations can do with a little bit of a old wine in a new bottle kind of a look and feel, and a little feel to it. So thank you so much for inviting me for this. And oh yes, I forgot this one last thing. Mango Festival. Everybody talks about mangoes, and people talk about, mangoes coming from all over the country. Believe me, the mangoes in Tamil Nadu, be it Imapasand or Salem as a destination, is a story by itself. So I really think, there's so much to offer, and I'm all excited if there's an opportunity to develop any of this into actual, travel products. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lakshmi. And there is a downside to what you have said, and there is an upside to what you have said. The downside is many of the destinations you mentioned to me, I probably won't be able to recollect them and put them back. And that is exactly the downside with the tour operators and DMC, be it based in Bandra or Gurgaon, to be able to sell it. So I think the shortcomings here and the upside of this is, today in the world of digital content space, here's an opportunity to weave this around on actual sellable product and to be able to reach to the audience. So therefore,
Ashish, if I can just say one last thing. See, a lot of Tamil Nadu is also marketed to Tamilians. a lot of this can happen within Tamil Nadu and within the 4 states of Andhra, Kerala. You don't need North Indians to always come to South. We have enough of tourists which we can drive from Tamil Nadu and also from, let's say, from Andhra, from Kerala, from the states around. And it is not, and even from places like Singapore or Japan, because these are places that you can easily market, like a Thaipusam and a Tiruchendur festival can easily be marketed. The colonial tours can easily be marketed. Tirunelveli as a district is very well known because of it's very well connected as well. So there are, yes, some which are offbeat, and I understand that, but there are some which are very much in the radar, and they can actually be marketed in a better form.
So understood, and that's on a short and a medium term. But if you look at a longer term, then you have to touch the ecosystem of the universe of travel, which would mean your international audience, which will mean all what we have talked about on this panel so far. And if we have to do that, then digitally the contents, be it in video, be it in storytelling, be it in descriptions, have to touch and resonate with the actual consumer. Till we are able to do that and put it on common platform. And as Naveen and Sanjoy, everybody said, build intellectual properties around, so you actually make it sellable, then you will be living in an isolated world, creating to a particular vernacular needs. And we are here probably to create a larger universe of travel. That's what my thinking would be, Lakshmi. But thank you so much for coming in. Vipul Jain has been very patient. I guess patience should be his virtue. He's in the religious tourism business. So he's been very sage, he's been very quiet, but over to you, Vipul, to tell us.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ashish. Just a quick introduction. We are into tourism technology, and we are solving the underlying problems in the tourism sector. We are working in tandem with the tourism industry. We are working with the government itself. So I was listening to the fascinating conversation, and I was trying to visualize the entire different places. I'm sorry, I don't have, I didn't get much time or I say, I actually never traveled to Tamil Nadu as such, other than Chennai. That took a couple of times only, that was on a business trip. But I was kind of fascinating that I was trying to visualize, okay, different hidden gems, different fair festivals, different different cultural aspects of entire Tamil Nadu. And I'm completely in agreement with you that there is a binding force which needs private players and the government and the tourism knowledge around that complete region into one single platform. And I think that is where the technology can help. What we have been doing, and I mean, just to give an idea about Uttarakhand, we whenever we talk about these kind of issues with any state government or any locals or any people, the issues are similar. That okay, there are so many hidden gems almost everywhere. People don't know about it, and the idea is okay, how to market it, because it's very difficult because there are hidden gems. Only few people who know about it has the knowledge. And the knowledge remains with those guys. In fact, a couple of them put them on their website, and the bloggers like Lakshmi, they put in the blogs. But in due course of time, all those blogs and etc., they get burdened into bunch of into so much content of the internet, so that whenever a tourist or whenever a tourist actually trying to look for it, it doesn't he cannot find it easily. So what we are building is a technology where we are dividing the complete tourism, the state tourism into different regions. We call it a region. It's basically, let's suppose a place of around 100 to 200 kilometers, and build a different tourism, I would say, products and services based on their location. And this is an open system where both the tourist and the tourism industry and the government, all of them actually can send their content to that particular place. That's a single inventory, that's a single binding force, and the tourist can actually look at a single piece of information, right? That's from an information point of view. But whoever is put that, let's suppose if there's a one single tour operator who knows about, or there's a local service provider who provides an experience around that place, so that if somebody has put in that content, then the tourist will be actually able to see that. In case tourists want to get some bookings or get some experience, he can directly contact with that particular person. So in a sense, we are connecting the different dots as we are speaking about, and And the government is also a part of it. It talks in terms, if I give an example of Char Dham Yatra, which we are actually working on it. So there's a temple, there's a Badrinath Temple Committee, then there is a government GME and guest houses, then there's a private players, for example, Tehri Lake and everything. So we connect them together, and tourists can actually take a mixed tour as per their choice. So that's what we are doing actually. So that is one problem that we are solving. And other problem which we are solving is basically a major problem, but kind of gets ignored when we are talking about all that happy times and promoting tourism. We all talks about goody things, but look at from a tourist point of view. In case of any problem, in case of any disaster, for example, what happened in 2007 in Tamil Nadu, in the Chennai itself, there was a flood that came in, or there was a tsunami that came in, or there was a Kedarnath, a flood that actually happened in 2013. In that case, all of us are in a completely fix of what to do. We have no idea, we have no connect. So what we are doing is actually we are connecting the tourist and the different department of and the government itself, so that in case of any warning, in case of any alert, the tourist and the tourism industry as well, they get forewarnings, they get forewarning alerts as well, so that they can take an action accordingly. Let's suppose, for example, in the last, I think first week of January, there was a huge, this thing, snow in the Himachal near Manali, and there was a weather warning that came in. So there was actually a bunch of forewarnings that went to tourists who were there on their way from Manali to different other hills area. That okay, there's a huge chance of snow. Don't drive them unless you have a tire chain. Similarly, in 2017, when we are actually, there was a flood in the Tamil Nadu, we took help of a few very aggressive 4x4 roaders who are a part of our system itself. They actually rode their 4x4 vehicles into the flood, and they actually saved, they actually helped a lot of people. So we are actually building a community, a complete system, which is a location based, which not only promote tourism and not only promote different hidden gems, but connect different dots, connect different providers together, so that they can mutually help each other, and everyone gets advantage, everyone gets help from the system itself. And government, because one of the things, government comes to the picture because uh, not only for promoting for tourism, in case of any problem, in case of any help, it's the government responsibility to help those guys, right? But the problem with the government, what we saw is that they have no idea about how many tourists are there, whether there's any tourists in that area, or in case of any emergency, whom to contact. I mean, neither the tourist knows about it, nor the government, nor the administration knows about it. So we are registering tourists. We know their locations. We know that okay, their travel plans, and so that in case of any help, we have the complete system together built in, and they help each other. So we are building a complete system, and that's what I mean. I'm pretty much sure that okay, in Tamil Nadu or any other states, this system can actually help a lot of people. And for this, I definitely need help of each one of you to build a complete community there. That's what we are doing. Over to you, Ashish.
Thank you, Vipul. And of course, in many ways, we have already in the panel articulated that all the dots, all the people, all the products, all the contents need to come together into one universe. And what you have really resonated is exactly in a very practical and digital way, demonstrated how it can come to the rescue of not only the stranded tourism, because we do owe a responsibility to that, but it also perhaps going forward, in many ways, to what Shobha does best is on the ecotourism side. That, you know, I had a conversation with her once, and I said, can we get these tourists to carry their own dump back home instead of dumping down the roadside? You know, there are many things like these, yes, which I think technology and geotagging and maps would play a great role in. To be able to pick up who's dumping waste where. On a panel here would be a wonderful way for Shobha to see who's the culprit behind dumping that.
I'd like to add one more thing. We are just working with Map My India, who's actually providing and also they just recently tied up with ISRO as well. So bring the complete system into a complete different level, not only just the information, but the entire whenever you travel, you can actually build your own circuits. You can travel as per your choice. You can choose, okay, like what are different things you want to see, and you can actually drive down to that places.
Yeah, I think the backbone of people moving from one place to another is all map driven in some manner. And if you're able to geotag them, take their activity, take their digital footprints and put it to the use of giving them the experience and also managing their holidays or whatever is the ultimate way forward.
And one more thing that we are doing is actually we are kind of trying to see, we are, for example, if there are a couple of destinations, there are tourist attractions, and we see a long queues out there, we are actually forewarning tourists, and we are also helping government and the tourism industry to manage that crowd.
Right.
For example, let's suppose in Kedarnath, there's a huge queue of a couple of hours you need to wait in line. So what we are doing is actually building a batch kind of a thing, so that each batch consists of approximately 500 tourists. So instead of standing in the queue, you actually wait anywhere else, and rather than like wasting your time in the queue. So that's the kind of technology that we are working on.
Correct. Although I went to boarding school in Missouri, but few years ago, it took me 5 hours to drive from Dehradun to Missouri because the whole thing was crowded.
Right. That was in the peak season, right?
That's the way it is. Well, thank you for the panel. And I think we have quick round of audience question, although the questions which have been forwarded to me have been more or less been answered, but I think we will still correct them. One is somebody said, how about a Tamil Nadu Lit Fest question for Sanjay Roy? Sanjay, I think you've already articulated that, and we know there is a scope, and Naveen has mentioned it. I'm sure offline one would work and build towards that. Then, people said, what are the top 3 priorities of promoting Tamil Nadu tourism? I can't, unfortunately, do paucity of time pose this question to each of the panel, but does anybody want to take on one? And I have one suggestion from each of you 3, which is what should be done immediately.
Strategy. Strategy mapping and educating the world about the riches and opportunities that Tamil Nadu has.
Naveen?
Well, I agree with Sanjoy, but I think more going internationally, I think let the Indians first know what's there in Tamil Nadu, and how do we actually put 3 or 4 things together rather than putting 10 things together and not acting on them. And that's exactly what I wanted to sort of, before ending this webinar today, I wanted to come back to the panel and say, look, and Manish, I think you have a responsibility of putting this entire thing together, and we need to form a small little action plan, which as FICCI, we need to go to the government and say, these are the top 3 or 4 things we've taken from this webinar, so that there is an effective follow-up. We don't want to get into a position that we've done the webinar, we've showcased what we know a little about Tamil Nadu, about tourism, and we go back and forget about it, and the government, and we leave it to the government. No, we don't have to leave it to the government. I think what we need to do as FICCI is list down the actionable items from here. We all know that what is there in tourism. I mean, everybody highlighted some aspect or the other of the product offerings of Tamil Nadu that each one of us know, or we can know it from reading a lot about Tamil Nadu, or learning from people, or learning from travel. But what we need to do is we need to, I run a business, so I will give it a shape of a business. When we run a business, we want to know the action plan. So we would like, as FICCI, to put together an action plan, give it to the government and say, look, these are the 3 things we want from you, and these are the few things that we will do to put together and create something about Tamil Nadu, and let's see some action happening there. And who knows, we might have something coming out of this very soon. And today, when people talk about tourism in India, people talk about 3 or 4 destinations, and Tamil Nadu doesn't really feature on it immediately. But we want Tamil Nadu to feature on it. And why will people always say, घूमने जाना है या conference करने तो गोवा जाना है, नहीं तो कश्मीर जाना है, नहीं तो Port Blair जाना है, why not Tamil Nadu? Tamil Nadu has so much to offer. All of you articulated it so well. But we have a responsibility now as FICCI, and I have a responsibility as its co-chairman to actually put an actionable plan and see what can be done. Thank you.
Well, quickly, Sundar and Shobha, you have a one-liner, and don't forget, we just witnessed some beautiful test matches in Chennai a while ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to sum up, I think, we should, so many of the products which Lakshmi was talking about, which is not consumable. So we have to make it consumable. So I think she missed that Kulasekarapattinam festival, which is one of the world class. I don't know how you missed that. I was waiting to hear that from you. But it is not consumable. You are talking about the Jain circuit, way back 10, 15 years, I just wanted to give a solution. I invested something like a Los Angeles bus tour, something like that, to witness the Jain circuit in and around Madurai. It's a fascinating product, but unfortunately, ahead of time, the product failed, and I have to personally lose money on that. So one thing is we have to make it consumable. So for that, you can't expect the government to do anything about it, and we have to create awareness. Fortunately or unfortunately, the DMCs are very strong in North India, as somebody said. So we have to bring them here and create this knowledge. The consistent farm tours for them to sell this product to the international community. I think if we do that, we can expect more footfall into Tamil Nadu. That will solve all the problems at the moment. Thank you.
Sundar, I'll just add before Shobha comes in. I mean, in the days of internet and technology, I've always believed I'd like to see the next Make My Trip coming out of Shillong. Why should it be coming out of Gurgaon? So similarly, I would say these DMCs you spoke about, and obviously they would be internet and technology driven. They should be coming out of Tamil Nadu or the other states which they want to showcase. So they integrate into a larger platform to be able to drive the force.
Yeah, but to answer your question, Ashish, that they can't see, how do you sell from Jaipur? How do you sell the Golden Triangle with the passion? You know what it is. What Lakshmi was explaining with the passion about her birthplace in and around Kallide Kurichi, Tirunelveli and all that. This cannot be, the content cannot be derived from the internet, and somebody cannot really do the storytelling of this. So somebody has to experience these things. Even a filter coffee, you can just talk about putting a picture, the dabra and the coffee, but what is a filter coffee? One should go to Kumbakonam and should know what is filter coffee is all about. So it is first-hand information is lacking, and unless and until they experience, they can't really sell. This is the gap between the product and the marketing. So
just to enhance what you're saying, in a dispersed working environment, this work away from. So this customized and centralized customer centers anyway going to be dispersed. So you could have a regionalized sitting in Tamil Nadu, somebody sitting in Kerala, and then the local flavor comes in from that.
Yeah, somebody has to spend time on this. So Mr. Naveen Kundu was talking about Chettinad. So I'm from Chettinad actually. So I made a Chettinad. It was my dream to make Chettinad as a destination. Way back 1996, I created 2 rooms. He was talking about festival in Chettinad. You won't believe that I have moved. Somebody was talking about Thaipusam. So I moved Thaipusam with various French groups and the entire French, journalist coming into Chettinad and witnessing Thaipusam in Chettinad. So, okay, as a business perspective, I have done that. So this has to go on a marketing platform. So for Sundar to make this business, it doesn't work that way. So this is what we are lacking.
Right. Shobha, you're on mute.
Which is where this whole idea of advisory comes in. What Lakshmi put together is a series of ideas that as a consumable can be broken down into textile, festival, heritage, intangible heritage, cultural heritage. It kind of gets broken down into things like this. And then people are searching for it. And I'm sure Vipulji will agree that you can't really put on a place like Kallide Kurichi. Nobody can search for Kallide Kurichi. Since you also say that it's quite kind of a, tongue twister. You will look for something that Kallide Kurichi has to offer, which is where Lakshmi's research and Lakshmi's experience and Sundar's experience, Sundar's research comes in, and that is how destinations are made. Destinations are made on not on the basis of the city or that one particular destination, but as in layers of experiences that allude to certain interests. Now, Kallide Kurichi is not for everybody. Everybody can't go and start seeking, Jain temples and the history of Jains. And so these are for very, very, this forms the character of the destination. The main destination, of course, rests in its large and its visual things. the smaller ones, and in its veins and its arteries, is where runs the beauty and the layer and the character and the uniqueness of a destination lies in there. And that is what has to be put out into, whether as parts of hotel experiences or as hop on hop off buses that Sundar is talking about, or as privately run tours, textile or history or explorations or whatever, just so that you explore differently and are able to look at a destination from different angles, and just not its temples and just not this one or two things that needs to be done. Or generally how tourism works is, what is not available in north is available in the south, or a similar thing is available in south also, or whatever is available in Kerala, to some extent you can find it in Tamil Nadu. It doesn't work like that. The uniqueness actually comes in when you are able to touch these little nuances of every destination. And I think that is where this advisory or a collective, where somebody like Lakshmi leads to story, is very, very important. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sir. You have to unmute, Mr. Ashish.
Sorry. Yeah. So on that note, I'd like to thank the panel. Thank you for spending your time. It's been, like I said, a very plain speak kind of a panel, very refreshing after a long time. Otherwise, the panels land up saying what is the right thing to say. And I, by right thing to mean which sounds right, but it's been hard-hitting. It's been critical to its own self. It's been probably demonstrating a positivity to take things forward. I thank you. And I also thank the team FICCI, Manish, Samantha, Chetan, Anirban, who of course, it's been almost a year since the pandemic broke, and they have been behind the scene doing their job, and they're doing it pretty well at that. So continue with that, and thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you for my, thank you, Anirban. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.